Welcome to this installment in our series of videos designed to bring you more information about ACPE's new certification process. Today's session will focus on the admission process for entry into the ACPE Certified Educator Program. Our presenter today is Marcos Collado. Marcos is an ACPE Certified Educator and is currently a Pastoral Educator at IU Health in Indianapolis. He is serving as a member of the certification implementation team. As this session is part of a series of educational videos, we invite you to visit the certification page of the ACPE website, where you will find links to the other videos as well as any documents that are referenced. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Marcos.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone that's listening to this webinar. First of all, I want to say thank you to Mark for all the hard work that he's put into coordinating these webinars and also helping put some of these presentations together. So without you, Mark, we would be lost. So thank you so much. There's a lot of questions and about the admissions process. So I want to, before we delve into the contents of this webinar, want to clarify that I will be focusing on the admissions process up until phase 1. So entry into the curriculum where the applicant will be starting the core curriculum. So questions around current candidates or associates, that sort of questions, this presentation will not cover that, okay? So a couple of things before we get into the presentation. Do want to clarify some terminology, some language. So we have been used to the acronym of SES, Supervisory Education Student. So I want to clarify that for the purposes of this presentation and moving forward, that we are moving towards calling any applicant or any student that goes through our certification process as a CEC, Certified Educator Candidate. So that purpose of that is to align our training students with the title that we have taken, that as an association we have agreed on, of Certified Educator. Therefore, our students will be known as Certified Educator Candidates, CEC. So please, the term candidate may conjure up old thoughts about the candidate process or a candidate level, and now therefore they're getting ready to work on their papers and can supervise independently. That's not what I mean when I say Certified Educator Candidate. That's the old, it will stand to represent for SES now, all right? So just, so we are on the same page in terms of the language that I will be using. So, so let's walk through this, all right? So the admissions process into a Certified Educator program requires both acceptance by an ACPE center and the ACPE training process. So there's two different acceptance by for this student, for the candidate to be officially admitted as a CEC student. So in terms of initiating the process, so an aspirant or an applicant initiates a process by submitting an application to an ACPE center or centers that is accredited for Certified Educator CPE, and that this center employs a certified educator who is part of the national faculty. So we will be distributing more information about the national faculty and how one can become a member of the national faculty. So if you haven't supervised SESs in the past 3 years, there will be a process by which you will be educated and to be able to become part of the national faculty and work with our CECs, okay? So an aspirant who is interested applies to a center and then make sure that that center has a certified educator who is part of the national faculty. So something that we will encourage all centers to encourage their applicants is to have applicants develop an electronic portfolio. We're not requiring for applicants at the center level to develop an electronic portfolio for the center's admission process. Okay, but it behooves the applicant to start developing an electronic portfolio, because this will be imperative and a requirement for later on in the admissions process when they go up for the formal admissions interview, in which competencies will be reviewed by a number of people. So we have developed a series of webinars that we will require each CEC or applicant to review before going up for the formal admission interview, which includes how to develop a portfolio. It will highlight also another webinar around the competencies and what they are and what they are expected to have met by the time they go for the formal review of the competencies, the formal admission interview. And also a webinar around rubrics and how to use rubrics and what they are. But at this point, when they are applying at the center, for the center, to be admitted by the center, we encourage them to start developing an electronic portfolio, but it's not required at that point. We're gonna leave that up to the centers to determine how they want to receive and file the materials that they do get for an application for any number of applicants. Okay. So interviews, plural. So the interviews are an integral part of the competency assessment process. So while the formal review of the competencies will not take place until they are admitted at the center, and it will take place at a later date, we do encourage our colleagues and centers that are looking at taking on CECs, Certified Educator candidates, to start using the competencies in their own admissions interviews at the center level, so you can get a sense of the level of readiness for this applicant. It's a good way for you to start vetting, is this someone who is light years away from actually coming into the process, or is this somebody that, they're close to meeting these competencies? So we're gonna welcome them into our center and take them under our wings and start preparing them for the second interview, which will be the formal admissions interview. That should they demonstrate that they have met all the competencies, they will be formally admitted into the CEC program, ACPE CEC program. So before I continue, so the competencies will be posted on the national website. So we would encourage everyone to visit the website and start looking at these competencies if you want to use them. So you can start using them in your own admissions interviews at the center level. So each applicant shall participate in 2 interviews, as I was saying. First with the local center, and second, after acceptance by the local center with representatives of the Certification Commission. So this second interview will not just be the representatives of the Certification Commission, but also members of the training center will be also part of that interview to assess formally whether the CEC has met the necessary or the required competencies, then to be granted access to the core curriculum and officially being in phase 1. We will send more information about how exactly to go about coordinating and who to contact in order to schedule these interviews and how to include members from the Certification Commission. So more information will be forthcoming about that. So while the interview with the local center will be in person, the formal admissions interview in which competencies are reviewed with the commission representatives may have persons joining via video conference. So it could be somebody from the area, it could be somebody at the national level, but these members of the commission they don't have to be present in person for this formal admission review interview. Okay, so there's a lot of IT and technological stuff that will go into the video conferencing, if that's the path that any center will take if a member of the commission cannot be there in person. And we are there, and we will be there to support you. I know that you will probably have questions about how exactly, what software, what sort of program should I use. We will provide more information about that and support in getting that established, perhaps in your center. So moving forward, so the decision-making process. So the formal acceptance to the local center. So a word about this. So formal acceptance to the local center and all contractual arrangements within that center are separate from acceptance to the ACPE Certified Educator process. So one may be accepted or hired by a local center and not yet be accepted into the ACPE Certified Educator process. So we want to make that clear that when an applicant is accepted into the center, they're not officially recognized as a CEC within ACPE. This is for the second interview where competencies are reviewed, that is determined. So want to make that clear. So if an applicant has not met the required competencies, again, that commission or that committee will consist of members from the training center and also members of the commission, the certification commission. So if the applicant has not met the required competencies, the applicant will be given feedback from the assessment process, and that will be formally documented about the process, and their suitability for reapplication will be discussed. So we are not establishing any sort of time frame. So we are not, as of right now, the commission or the committee will not stipulate that you can't come back in a month or 2 months or 3 months. That will be something to be discussed between the commission, the training educators, and also the applicant. So policies and practices. So this will be familiar to you. So applicants must meet the criteria outlined in standard 403, 1 through 6 only. The one that we took out, number 7, I believe, was having at least 1 unit of supervisory CPE. But because the applicant is not officially admitted or has not officially yet been accepted into the CEC process, therefore, the 2 months, 3 months, 4 months that student is with their center, that time is not officially recognized as a quote unquote supervisory unit or a CEC unit. Therefore, that's why we don't have that on the list. But these, as they go up for the formal admissions interview, that second interview, They need to demonstrate ACPE membership, college graduation, a graduate theological degree or its equivalent, ordination or commission to function in ministry by an appropriate religious authority as determined by ACPE, an endorsement or / accountability by a faith group, and also demonstrate pastoral experience. So pretty straightforward. So other items that need to be included in the portfolio. Again, these can be included in the initial admissions interview at the center level, but these must be included as the student or the applicant goes up for the formal admissions interview. So a completed ACPE Certified Educator application. They should be able to demonstrate evidence of having completed the webinars on the competency-based education, the use of portfolios, and the rubrics. As I said earlier, documentation of meeting the criteria outlined in Standard 403. And this is something new, a video presentation of the applicant teaching a didactic, doing an in-service, even a sermon, or some other activity in which they are teaching or facilitating some sort of education. It could, it could very well be once they are accepted into the center, as they get geared up for the formal admissions interview, that you, as a national faculty training educator, might have your student to do a didactic and have that recorded. But the idea is that we really want to get a sense here at the formal admissions interview before we as an organization decide to really invest, potentially years and lots of resources into any one given student, to really get a sense of, do they have the potential of being able to teach, a group of students? How do they facilitate? How do they show up? Their presence in being able to facilitate learning for others. So, like I said, it's something new, but this will be something that will be uploaded into the portfolio for the student. And also all the evaluations from the applicant's previous supervisors, as well as previous self-evaluations. So all that will be uploaded into the student's or the applicant's portfolio. Also, part of the materials that will be uploaded into the portfolio would be as a statement of the applicant's theology or philosophy or belief system around spiritual care. So we really want to get a sense that our applicants that are CECs are strong spiritual caregivers. So that's something that will be included in the materials. A paper articulating their theological, spiritual belief positions that undergird their actual ministry practice. Also, a paper is required that demonstrates their multicultural awareness. So this is where the applicant will write articulating their own sense of cultural humility, cultural competence, and how they understand that impacting their spiritual care practice, and how they function in a multicultural clinical context. So some of these resemble some of the materials that we would require what we used to call readiness. So some of these materials may seem familiar. Also, part of the materials that we want to include in the portfolio prior to going for that second interview is a paper that demonstrates the applicant's understanding of what a certified educator is and what are they getting themselves into, you know, their impressions of certified educator, CPE. Also, their motivation. We want to make sure that they have a clear motivation for entering this demanding process. So they also should also reflect on their CPE journey, previous units, supervisors and peer groups, and addressing how they have engaged the action reflection action model of learning. So in some ways, you know, it's a blending of a sense of their CPE journey, reflecting on their CPE journey and how they developed using the CPE process, but also getting a sense of what is motivating them to enter this this next phase, this next level of CPE education. This is also kind of standard from our CPE application, so a reasonably full account of the applicant's life. So obviously highlighting significant and important persons and events in their life and how they have impacted and continue to impact the applicant's personal and professional growth, with special emphasis on family of origin issues, current family relationships, and important supportive relationships that continue to shape and impact the applicant's ministry or spiritual care practice. Same thing with the spiritual growth and development. So for the applicant to demonstrate in written form how they understand their own faith, heritage, and grounding, and how they understand significant conversion experiences, significant moments, experiences with the holy and the sacred, and how they have incorporated those into their own ministry practice. So this, you know, again, this is a paper that you are familiar with that you can, again, require at the center level. But if you don't know that, it'll be a requirement for the formal admission interview process, that second interview later on. Description of the applicant's work, vocational history. Pretty self-explanatory in terms of a chronological list of jobs, position, dates of employment, and brief statement about current employment and work relationships. All this will be included in the portfolio again. So an account of a helping incident. Obviously, they would have had numerous units of CPE, so we're requiring that a recent verbatim be submitted for the formal admissions interview. I know that if I ask you, my colleagues, about what recent means, you may have different takes on what that is. So I think it's safe to say that within the last 3 to 6 months, that is recent enough for an applicant to submit a verbatim for this formal admissions interview. So something that we want to stress is that we're really wanting to ensure that that the applicant demonstrates clear competency around the level 2 outcomes. So we wanted them. So when the student writes and submits his verbatim, we really want to get a good sense, a clear sense that they are excellent spiritual caregivers, that they have clearly met the level 2 outcomes. So that will also be uploaded in the portfolio. So matriculation. So upon confirmation of enrollment, through registration of the unit. So the national office will send an email to the National Faculty Educator and the Certified Educator candidate with information about the Certified Educator CPE core curriculum requirement. So remember that the official matriculation or enrollment into the CEC or the CE process, it requires that not only the admissions by the center, but also at this admissions interview, that there is a approval by that committee for then the student to be officially recognized and then receive the email from the National Faculty and Certified Educator spelling out the core curriculum requirements moving forward. So once the Certified Educator candidate has been officially admitted, a certification commission reviewer will be assigned to the CEC. So this is a person who will be providing oversight for the process of the CEC, looking at portfolio, perhaps making writing feedback, observations, assessments about the CEC along the way, and also will help out in coordinating the transition for the CEC into phase 1, where they will be engaging the core curriculum. I mean, also the Certification Commission Review will also assist in the pairing and in the matching of a theory paper mentor later on into phase 1. So that concludes this webinar. I'm sure that you have questions about the admissions process. We will welcome all those questions. There will be a method and a process by which you can convey those questions to us. I think Mark will create something on the national website where these webinars, and not only this one, but also our own competency-based education, the actual competencies will be posted. There will be a way for you to post your questions. We'll collect all those questions and try to answer those as quickly and as thoroughly as possible here in the coming weeks. So thank you. I know that this is a shift in the ways that we have been doing things for the last, I don't know, decade or so. So it's not as smooth. It is not a perfect process, but I think that overall we are moving towards a more collaborative, developmental, supportive process in which we can ensure the success of our students and hopefully future colleagues. So thank you again. I am Marcos Collado in Indianapolis, Indiana, with Indiana University Health. My email is mcollado, MCOLLADO @iuhealth.org. Should you have any specific questions about anything that I've shared here in this webinar. So thank you again. Blessings.